Hey everybody, before we get started, just a reminder, this episode is brought to you by patrons like Icon Comics, Qua, Jeremy Vasquez, Kylie Den, Nestor Flores, Rogue Robin, Soda-san0424, and Video Gamer 75. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early and lots of other goodies, and it really help us out. Thanks for your support, everybody.
The seed of the apothecary, an heir to aided ends.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk FGO Wanted, the show where we let you know if you want to roll a 5-star, or possibly some other kind of star, but who cares? Anyway, today we are back to form. It's been a little while. Been like, what, a month? Yeah, about a month. Since we were here last, there wasn't really any brand new Servantos in the month of January, but we're back, and we're returning to form with a limited 5-star. We're going to talk to you today about Semiramis, the new 5-star Assassin, who is premiering in the Valentines event soon, as of the time recording this. But not actually premiered. So, for those of you who are here for the first time, Wanted follows a basic 4-part format, where, in order to give you your full experience on whether or not you want to roll for somebody, we talk about the person's real-life history, we talk about their lore with a capital L in the Fate universe, then we move on to talking about their mechanicals, you know, what the unit does, if they feel a niche you need, then we talk about their rarity. Not their star rarity, but how frequently their rate-ups are, because that can be a huge deal for rolling characters, is knowing when they will appear. And we have like 2 years of clairvoyance in NA, so let's use it. So's today, Semiramis, very interesting historical character, and we should get that out of the way. So, Semiramis is one of those characters, and I'll say character because there was a real historical Queen Regent, called Semiramis. There's a lot of M's in there, who was a historical Assyrian queen, and she ruled as Queen Regent for about 5 years for her son after her husband died, which was very unprecedented in those times. And she, Semiramis, or Semiramis, because the name can be written both ways, was a very well-respected ruler, which is interesting. Very historically famous, did a lot to stabilize the empire and even expand it, and there's been some scholarly theory that because of her powerful and stable rule for those few years to kind of pilot out of a period of political turmoil, which involved leading military campaigns against people like the Persians and the Greeks, that is why she morphed into the mythical figure of Semiramis. Because there was an actual historical figure, but there is a separate mythological or legendary figure of the same name who is similar but different, right? And there's a lot of writing about her, legendary, etc., going on and so forth. So we'll cover some of those in general. According to Diodorus Siculus, the kind of the basic layout of the legend, some of which will be reiterated in Fate. Semiramis was the child of a mortal and the fish goddess Derkato, who was also, in Fate is called a mermaid goddess, so she's got a magical association with fish, or doves, because she was abandoned by her mother, but was protected by doves, who fed her until the royal shepherd found her. Semiramis was married to a general called Anes for a while, and she gave him great advice and even led a siege of soldiers at one point, but the Assyrian king Ninus was so struck with her that he fell in love with her and compelled Anes to give her up. There was some back and forth, some negotiation, and then some threatening, and so Anes committed suicide and hanged himself. After which point, Ninus then married Semiramis. They were married for a while, and had a son. Though he's got a red link on Wikipedia, so I don't think he did much of anything. But Ninus was wounded by an arrow, and then died, so Semiramis masqueraded herself as her son, and tricked the army into following her, and ruled as Queen Regent for a while, expanding the world. And this legend kind of begins the habit of historical figures attributing things to her. She's said to have expanded lots of places, built up lots of things, protected various cities, such as building a new wall around the city of Babylon to protect it and kind of revitalize it, building many monuments and things, which she didn't actually, but they thought she was so cool that she did. And she's said to have ruled for 42 years. So there's a lot of ancient scholarship about Semiramis. Many, many historians, all the famous ones, wrote a little bit about her. She's been associated with Ishtar and Astarte in history, which I don't think Fate does, but we'll see. Space Ishtar's a while out. And in general, she's known for founding lots of temples, cities, fortifying cities, and helping them out. There's a lot of association with her as a builder, which may have come into the other thing that kind of came around. Some things were ascribed to her that shouldn't be, but basically every stupendous work of antiquity in the region was at some point attributed to her, and her name is even scratched somewhere onto the Gate of Babylon. That gate, the Ishtar Gate. But there are some negative interpretations. In the Middle Ages, medieval scholarship, there's a lot of sort of negative rap for her. She is associated with lust. In the Divine Comedy, for instance, she's seen in the second circle of hell. There's one historical story about having an incestuous relationship with her son. Another story where she invented the chastity belt. That's a weird one. And in other cases, she's, considered to wield witchcraft and, lust after the kings of other countries kind of thing. There's a tragedy by Voltaire about her and lots of other various operas and things. She appears, actually, in one of Shakespeare's plays, Titus Andronicus, and is in the intro of Taming of the Shrew, mentioned. In general, though, especially as we move on towards the Renaissance period in the late Middle Ages, she's once again moved back around to being portrayed positively. She's even considered on some of the list of the female Nine Worthies, which was a personage who were said to embody the ideals of chivalry, and considered a positive comparison for many female rulers. Catherine the Great was once given the designation Semiramis of the North. And there is a lot of weird conspiracy theories and back and forths, and just all kinds of interesting attributions to her. Just in general, one of those characters who was super famous in history. Started as a real historical person, grew to legendary status, and then it was like, oh, well, this Semiramis chick is pretty cool. We're just going to write about her. She built that. She conquered those guys. She killed that guy. She invented this. All kinds of stuff. Though also, shout out to Semi. When I do research for these shows, usually I like to include a slide with maybe some historical artwork during this front half when we're talking about history, lore, and stuff. And I've complained before about how just straight horny Renaissance artists are sometimes. Poor Cleopatra. I didn't do a wanted for her, but I found this a lot with Kirky. Even Brynhildr, because there's a famous bathing scene in her legends. Lots of just pictures drawn of them with her tits out. Not so with Semiramis. Almost always, if not well-dressed in a nice dress or something, artists even go the full mile, and she's straight up clad in armor. So, yes, she's viewed in history as kind of a warrior queen, a ruler and a conqueror. So, let's talk about her lore in Fate. So, obviously, Semiramis is a major character as the Assassin of Red in Fate Apocrypha, where she is the servant specifically summoned by Kotoine Shiro, aka Amakusa, presumably so he can use her Hanging Gardens of Babylon and be pretty broken. Because, like I said, there was a period of time where basically everything marvelous and historical in that region was attributed to Semiramis. Honestly, she could probably, if we wanted to get real deep, summon up another whole cadre of cities and walls and other bullshit. But obviously she plays a major role there, including having a little bit of a rivalry with Mordred, because in Mordred's words, she reminds her of her mother. Semiramis in FGO will be playing a major role, the leading banner character for the upcoming Valentine's 2020 event, so look forward to that. But also, in a couple of months here, we're going to be getting the APOC collab, where she is certain to return in some form. I'd have to actually check if she's a raid boss or something, but probably I think they got through everybody, because when we actually get to Apocrypha, I think you can actually summon all the APOC servants. Also, completely unfair, she's going to get another banner during that time period. How BS is that, right? 2 months difference? Whereas MHXA has to wait a year? Crazy. Now, there are a couple interesting things about her Fate portrayal. in Apocrypha and even further in FGO and stuff, there's a lot of emphasis on Semiramis as a poisoner. This gives her class of assassin, but also ability-wise, she's much more comfortable as a caster, which makes sense with the divine parentage and the association with lots of mystical arts and disguises. But there's even the attribution of her, claiming her to be the world's first, history's first poisoner. I gotta be honest, while admittedly I didn't deep dive, I don't have enough time to pop down to my local college library and hit the stacks, but I couldn't find a lot of references to that out in the open for Semiramis. Not to say that there couldn't be an anecdote about that, because like I said, every famous historian had something to say about her, but I did not see it as a prominent story. So it could just be that somebody in the scholarship latched onto that. Honestly, the cynic in me says that they made it a poisoning story so that they could make her seem more dynamic, because she poisoned King Ninus right away, but also to take care of what would be seen to some fans in Japan as problematic issue of the fact that in historical myth, Semiramis was married to that king guy for probably a couple of years, and they definitely banged because they definitely had a son, but that could cause complications. So we just poisoned him to get rid of him right away. Honestly, if you want a historical poisoner, y'all, Locusto of Gaul. Get Nero's BFF in here. Also, on top of that, there's a lot of, like I said, this emphasis on the poison woman. It's also interesting. We talk a lot about how sometimes fate will, not necessarily whitewash, but will definitely waifu up characters to make them seem less sinister or less morally ambiguous, or at least less violent to make them more approachable. I would phrase it as Semiramis got the reverse Boudica. Boudica, you think of her in history, it's like she's smashing skulls under her chariot and stuffing people in wicker baskets to feed to crows and stuff. But in FGO, she's, a big, squishy, big sis type. I just mentioned in some points of scholarship, Semiramis was considered one of the 9 worthies, an embodiment of chivalry. A physical, armored warrior queen who, conquered vast territory and led a vast empire. But in FGO and Apocrypha, she's like, ooh, poison. Ooh, I'm the poison pill master. Ooh. I'm super sinister. I'm an assassin. So it's very interesting. Not to say that obviously she didn't do some deceiving and some shenanigansing in some legends, but it's very interesting to see this counterpoint, where obviously the character archetype was one thing, and they kind of worked within their bounds to maneuver things a little bit more the other way. It's very interesting. Anyway, let's take a break and talk about mechanicals. So, Semiramis is an assassin of the 5-star variety. Her attack is pretty low, and her HP's really only okay, kind of in the middle of the pack there, which is a little saddening, because, obviously she is an offensive one, and assassins do have the old 0.9 problem, but she has a couple of interesting things to go for it. So she still has quite high star generation with good hit counts on her one quick card. Her NP gen, I think, is a little low, by default anyway, is a little low for her hit counts, but she does have the 3 arts cards to make up for it. She's got a caster deck, obviously, because she's really a caster in an assassin skin. But do remember that she has Territory Creation EX that you can see down there, and we'll cover some of the rest of that stuff later. So those arts cards are going to generate pretty good, and she's got a couple of strategies for that. In general, looking at her various hit counts and things, Semiramis is clearly not like a spammer in the conventional way, but definitely the intent that, you can fire multiple NPs here, okay? You're not necessarily hung up on just the fact that, oh, I'm only going to charge once and fire and then be dead, especially with some of her abilities. She's a little bit of a grinder, Not quite stall, but definitely meant to fire off a couple of hits. So, her default NP is Buster AoE, deals damage to all enemies. It increases all your allies' defense by 20% for 3 turns, which isn't awful. And it has the typical increase your NP strength first little boople. So 10% NP up to kind of compensate for that 0.9 damage multiplier. That goes up with overcharge, so if you can work her into a chain, she might key off faster. Remember that Osakabe Hime will eventually get a buff to be a little bit more buster-friendly, so those two can kind of work in tandem. And she has a rank-up quest for her NP to go to, quote, EX rank, which ups her damage multiplier by a free level basically gives you the equivalent of a free NP rank and adds the effect that for one turn it gives all allies 100% cleanse resist. That's kind of situational, but does kind of cement her as covering for your weaknesses as a team a little bit, you know? So, the important thing, though, I think should be said is that she's still an AoE Assassin with a Buster NP. It's, playing Setsubun, for instance, it has come to me that, man, AoE Assassins are real rare. So, finding one who can reach those heights of stats and is intended to be a damage dealer, because, no offense to Fumikotaro, but his kit doesn't really enhance his, damaging, like, at all, and he's quick, so, he's a good boy, but he's not gonna be a real slugger. And quite frankly, not a lot of assassins will be real sluggers. But still, that AoE effect is pretty good. And we've still got, over a year before Grey comes out. So let's talk about skills, because that kind of brings us together a little and kind of, I think, sets the tone. So, first skill, Familiar Pigeon, because that'll probably be translated as doves in English, but we're working with Pigeon for now. This is a pretty standard battery. Starts at 20%, so she can K-scope, and ends at 30%. And it also lowers all enemies' debuff resist for one turn by 30 to 50%, and it's on a 5-turn cooldown. So a 20% battery, or 30% at that point, with a 5-turn cooldown, not awful. Lowers enemies' debuff resist, which is good, because she's got a little bit of debuff shenanigans, which are important later. We'll talk about those when we go down the skill list. But just, like I said, 30% battery every 5 turns, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good effect. And enables you to start doing some of those quick sweep setups if you want to get in there. Now, her second skill is Double Summon. We talked about this before in the lore section. She's kind of a pseudo caster as an assassin. So, first up, this ups her NP gain for 3 turns from 20 to 40%. So, again, that NP gain seems a little low, but if you're dropping multiple arts cards or dropping an arts chain with that Territory Creation EX and this Double Summon effect, you're going to get a lot of NP. Really help her fire multiple shots. But also for 3 turns, you ignore the attack and defense advantages of casters. So this means that casters deal normal 1x damage to Semiramis, and she deals normal 1x damage to casters. This is a very niche ability, but it does let her do some unique things. So if you're in a mixed class node and you don't have any alter egos you want to use, obviously alter egos are pretty rare, and maybe you didn't want to roll for, say, Passion Lip or Kiara, a very understandable standpoint. This means that you could use her in a node where there are both riders and casters, say, and have a little bit of insurance, or maybe you're fighting like a caster boss, but rider adds or something, or even berserker adds, and you want to get that quick AoE in there to kind of fire off and soften up the enemy for some synergy, because Semiramis is a character who really plays to synergy. It's interesting. So this lets you do some unique things with her, but it's not going to make or break the kit. What probably does work on the kit is Arrogant King's Alcohol B. This is her other Noble Phantasm realized as a skill, so it consumes 8 critical stars, so watch out for that. But it poisons the enemy for 3 turns. Kind of minimal, it's only 500 to 1,000, but again, synergy that cooperates with those like, say, Serenity, and other poison memes if you're working on them. It also decreases all enemies' Buster card resistance for 3 turns. Now this is the bigger, because this is 30 to 50% resistance down. Which basically, as far as I understand it, card resistance is the same as basically a def down. It's the equivalent of having your Buster cards be 30 to 50% more effective. So, the equivalent of having 3 turns of mana burst on your whole enemies. That's pretty brutal, especially with her NP. It's entirely possible that you will pop this skill in an NP turn, do like NPAA or something, get some charge back, do some works in there. Or if you've got some charge or some batteries in there. And you may be able to fire a second shot before the Buster buff runs out. Even then, 50%, man, that hurts a lot. It's powerful. It works with the fact that it costs 8 critical stars, though that's really easy to fix. She is still an assassin, has very good star generation, even if she's only got 1 quick card. Got decent hits on her quick and Buster cards and extra and her NP. And also, that's called just a K-scope. So, overall, you can kind of see, I don't think that Semiramis is really a clincher. Like, she's not going to win the fight for you on her own, but she definitely has setup potential, has extension potential if you can keep her around to fire her NP multiple times, and has a lot of synergy potential. Her passive skills is she does get Presence Concealment C+, so her static star gen is raised a little. Like I said, she's got Territory Creation EX, so those arts cards hit really hard. She has Item Creation C, kind of middling, but still, since she does have a lot of that key debuff effect on her last skill, that little bit extra bit of resist is good, especially if you don't want to use her battery skill to lower their debuff resist a lot. And she has Divinity C for a slight damage boost. Probably not enough to make up for the 0.9 multiplier, but still a decent overall effect. If you're looking at CEs, well, the obvious is Starting NP, K-Scopes, Invisible, Imaginary Rounds, all that good stuff. Heck, even 50%ers, Halloween Princess, Golden Sumo, the Martha one that escapes me for now, but that's the one that's like Buster and NP up and Starting NP, stuff like that. Obviously, if you want to make sure to use her skill, you could give her a Star Gen CE, like a 2030 or something, but that's probably better put on some of your other supports, like if you got an Osakabehime. And then the other thing I think key to this would be NP or Buster. Just, she's not going to hit super hard, so you want her to hit hard. You want to enhance that. Team comps, now, not right now, but eventually, like I said, Osakabehime will get that buff to her skill, which will, which one is that? Is that her NP? Yeah, it's her NP, actually, that's, increases their max HP and their defense, which kind of synergizes with Semiramis, who's also got that similar defense effect, and then 3 turns of Buster Card effectiveness, which will synergize super well. And her skill upgrade will give the team critical damage, which could be useful. So that's another one. Another interesting shout out is that I think that after her strengthening quest for her NP upgrade, she actually has good synergy with Consort U, who has a Buster NP and 2 Buster cards, because Consort U's problem is that she cleanses herself of all buffs and debuffs, then does a really big self-Buster buff and all that stuff, inflicts Curse, so more DOT. If you do them in a chain, which will really help out Consort U, you could have Semiramis make everybody immune to buff removal, then have Consort U come in as a sweeper and kind of double up on your AoE shenanigans. And in general, your linkage is going to be anybody who improves NP generation and who improves Buster damage. So Merlin, obviously, because he'll heal and keep everybody alive, while also giving more damage, more hits, faster NP, stuff like that. If you're trying to do some quick charge shenanigans, because she has her own 20 to 30% battery, that means you can take a 50% CE, like I mentioned earlier, and combo with Waver. Honestly, Tomo's buff improves NP strength, right? Let me double check that. Because Tomo's going to get an even more strengthener. Yes, so eventually her curse is going to get upgraded to increase all allies' NP damage, in addition to her ability to targeted heal and improve arts effectiveness, which means that you could easily throw Tomo in with Semiramis if you wanted to risk it. And, Tammy's decently tanky. That has a similar synergy. You could buff Semiramis' arts card so she can charge her NP faster. You can buff her NP damage. You can heal her and stuff, etc. Also, skill cooldowns, which are already pretty short. That's another thing I like about Semiramis. Her cooldowns are pretty tight. So let's talk about the Rarity. What summon campaigns does Semiramis have? So obviously, there's the Prosperous Chocolate Gardens. And then the pre-campaign for Fate Apocrypha, she will come back, along with Amakusa and stuff. Yeah, there's a red banner and a black banner. So she's on the red, which is shocking. And we'll even have solo days. So that's pretty fast. If you miss her now, you might be able to come back. But then, you gotta watch out for that Achilles raid up right after. And then the following year, so next year, there should be a rerun of the campaign, the summoning banner, basically, but not the actual event. So you can get another chance to roll her next year, or get the CEs and stuff. And in future, she will likely show up in other various banners, because she is a limited assassin. And so that is Wanted. Hope you guys enjoyed that return to form there. Keep an eye out for some interesting videos out there in the future to come with some future events. We'll be sure to get those to you as they come. And for now, just enjoy that Valentine's event. Remember, you gotta complete the main story quest to get Semiramis' Valentine. I don't know, I don't make the rules. And so we will see you in the next video. And be sure to check out our recently released episode of Let's Talk FGO, which will give you the full pregame if you're curious about the Valentine's event. And I will see you in future episodes of Wanted. And of course, look forward to upcoming Let's Talk FGOs where we talk about the Valentine's event and more. And in general, just keep your eyes peeled. So if you like this video, be sure to give it a like. If you have any comments, leave them in the comment section down below. You can also join our Discord. That link is in the description. And in our video channel page as always. And of course, if you're new here and haven't already, please subscribe to the channel to get all of our latest videos, including future Wanteds and future Let's Talk FGOs. And considering that bell for notifications, even if you're already subscribed, so you always know when we post a new video, possibly suddenly, and when we stream and do other fun stuff too. And of course, like it says at the front of the show, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can get access to episodes early. You can get access to our podcasts like Let's Talk FGO in audio format, downloadable for as little as $1 a month. Get access to polls. Get access to other fun things. Listen to the show live if you support at a high enough level. And really, it's just a good time and it helps support us. All right, I'm out.